Hi, I'm Lily. It all started on an evening that was supposed to be wonderful, full of joy and support, but instead I remember it as the night when the exquisite glitter of crystal chandeliers became the backdrop for the bitterest pain. It was a dinner at Mrs. Thomas's house, arranged with the splendor peculiar to this place. The house sparkled, its walls seemed to absorb the light, refracting it through luxurious chandeliers, as if every decoration, every detail was created only to make an indelible impression. Under the high arch of the ceiling, from where majestic chandeliers hung, a long table stretched, at which family members and their loved ones gathered, invited to this seemingly special evening. The table was decorated with exquisite porcelain dishes with delicate paintings, glasses with elegant legs, shiny cutlery. Everything looked impeccable and elegant, as if it came from the world of ancient aristocratic dinners. I stood in front of the mirror in the guest room, adjusting the folds of my dress and peering at my reflection. My heart was trembling in anticipation. Today I was going to tell everyone the news that changed my career, my life. I was recently promoted to Senior Marketing Director, and this promotion was the result of many years of hard work, sleepless nights, and endless dedication. It seemed to me that this would be the very moment and everything I did would finally be recognized and appreciated. Clasping my hands, I took a deep breath, preparing to share this joy. I leaned over to my husband Adam, who was sitting next to me, and whispered that I had great news. His eyes met mine, and he nodded, smiling encouragingly, as if to say that now was the perfect moment to confess. I gathered all my courage to speak out. And so, with a deep smile and joy in my heart, I turned to the others at the table. I announced my promotion and how much it meant to me, hoping for warm words and supportive smiles. But instead of hearing congratulations or seeing happy faces, I felt something else, a cold, frightening silence. All eyes turned to me, but none expressed what I was hoping for. Mrs. Thomas, Adam's mother, sat across from him, her gaze stern, as if a heavy cloud of disappointment had descended. She pressed her lips together, leaned towards her son and, not trying to hide her words, hissed, "We raised him to be overshadowed by his wife's career." Her words seemed to pierce through me, they echoed coldly inside, turning the moment that I had hoped to make light into a dark corner of my memory. I glanced at Adam, hoping that he would stand up for me, that his supportive smile, given to me a few minutes earlier, would restore my confidence that he would stand next to me, despite the disapproving look from his mother. But Adam only shrank under her gaze, and his hand, which had been holding mine tightly under the table, slowly withdrew. I felt a wave of cold sweep through my body, as if the room itself and he had suddenly turned away from me. Not wanting to lose face in front of the audience, I tried my best to keep the lightness in my tone, holding back the pain and nervousness that were imperceptibly getting closer. I smiled, trying to look confident, and said that this promotion was a great opportunity that would open new doors for us, bring stability, allow us to think about more. But before I could finish, Mrs. Thomas interrupted me. Her voice, harsh, full of barely concealed condemnation, pierced the air like the hiss of a snake. "What about the family, Lily? Do you really think that money can replace the joy of having children?" Her words struck deep. I felt a pang, as if her remark had turned into an invisible wound on my heart before I could respond. And then Adam spoke up. His voice, cold as I had never heard it before, broke the silence. "When do you plan to slow down and start living for real, Lily? This career is not everything." I froze, feeling the ground give way under my feet. At that moment, amid the subdued light and the deliberate luxury of the surroundings, I realized that in front of me stood a man who seemed to have always been there, but now his words, which became a reflection of my mother's words, cut me like sharp blades. His betrayal hurt more than I could have imagined. The one who was next to me, who rejoiced at my success and supported all my endeavors, became a stranger in an instant. My voice trembled, and I found it difficult to find the words. whispered, "I thought you were proud of me." But the old atmosphere of joy has long since left this place. The main course was served, but the conversations at the table became muffled, as if everyone was afraid of another surge of tension. However, the tension continued to roll in, hung in the air like a thick, viscous fog, through which it was impossible to breathe deeply. We were sitting at this table, surrounded by exquisite dishes and fine porcelain, but it seemed to me that they were petrified, as if the whole atmosphere around was frozen in silent condemnation. I saw Adam's gaze become more and more stern, cold, reminding me of his mother's gaze, as if her shadow had completely taken over him. Every time I tried to say something, he gave me a look full of contempt, and his mother agreed with every word he said, as if approving of every stone thrown in my direction. When dessert was served, something happened that has been etched into my memory forever. The waiter carefully placed a beautiful piece of cake in front of me, which, with its exquisite appearance, only emphasized the irony of this evening. But before I could touch the fork, Adam stood up abruptly. He grabbed a napkin and threw it on the table with a loud bang. His sudden movement caused everyone to turn to him in surprise, their gazes darting in his direction with bated breath. Then his voice, echoing through the room, penetrated into every corner. "You have to know your place, Lily. You are my wife, not my competitor." These words, filled with contempt and humiliation, hung in the air. The silence held us together, and I felt like everything was bursting inside. It seemed to me that the world around me began to crumble, disintegrate into fragments that could not be collected. I slowly got up, feeling the rage and pain replace each other, like a flame burning my heart from the inside. "Being your wife doesn't mean I have to give up on my dreams, Adam. I deserve respect." My voice trembled, but there was determination in it, gathered from all the fragments of my inner strength. And at that moment, a shadow flashed in Adam's eyes, heavy and dark. Before I could figure anything out, his hands suddenly shot up in the air and slapped me hard in the face. The sharp sound of a slap echoed through the room, leaving everyone sitting in amazement, holding their breath. Sitting in the silence of my small apartment, I tried to collect my thoughts, feeling a strange calmness that I could only dream of before. The sun's rays penetrated through the windows, flooding the room with light that seemed to cleanse me, removing the burden of yesterday's events. It seemed that this was the first day of a new life, the day when I was finally able to breathe freely, without feeling the constant pressure, condemnation, and expectations that had held me down for years. Everything changed overnight. The events of the previous evening surfaced in my memory like reflections in water, distorted by light ripples. I remembered standing on the cold marble in elegant shoes, as each step rang out, leading me away from everything I knew. I also remember the emptiness that settled in my soul at the moment when I left Mrs. Thomas's house, turning around to see him shrink and disappear into the darkness of the night. At that moment, everything in me seemed to die, but at the same time a new feeling was born, a feeling of freedom, quiet as the first light breeze after a long storm. Dozens of messages flashed on the phone screen, filled with excitement, questions, and uncertain attempts to find out what had happened. My friends tried to express their concern, offered to meet, but I was not ready to explain myself. Right now, all my thoughts were focused on one thing: I needed to move on. To do this, I picked up the phone, with confidence backed up by desperation, and dialed the number of the lawyer who was recommended to me. I felt a slight tremor in my hand, but as soon as the lawyer answered, my words sounded resolute and without hesitation. "I need to file for divorce. It's urgent." His response was calm, professional, and he offered to meet today. "Yes, I will be there," I replied firmly. At that moment, I realized that there was no turning back anymore. The decision was made, and with every step I realized that, despite the fear and pain, it was my choice. The choice to be free from the shadows of the past, from pain, from betrayal, That day, bathed in morning light, became a symbol for me, something more than just the beginning of a new life. For the first time in a long time, I felt the determination and strength that helped me keep going forward. I looked into the future and felt that, despite all the difficulties, I was ready to face it with an open heart, to find a way to myself, to my dreams, and to the life I deserve. I tried to focus on my work, immersing myself in each task with my head, although my thoughts constantly returned to the events of that night, to the moment when my whole world changed. That day, I desperately wanted to find solace in the familiar work routine, to forget myself, even for a moment. But Mr. Brandon, my boss, noticed my distraction. His attentive gaze gently but insistently expressed concern, and he came up to me, discreetly asking if everything was all right. "I just have personal problems, but I can handle it, thank you," I replied, trying to speak in an even voice, with a slight smile on my face. "If you need some free time, just tell me," he suggested, to which I shook my head, still smiling. "No, thank you. Being busy helps." Mr. Brandon nodded, as if to say that he understood, and left me to work. This short conversation suddenly filled me with gratitude for his kindness and support, for the opportunity to be busy, even when my thoughts were chaotically trying to escape to the memories of a collapsed marriage. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally holding my life in my hands. Every assignment, every report, every email became a kind of anchor for me, preventing me from sinking into a pool of pain. Work saved me, allowing me to forget myself and, even for a while, put aside the past. The support of my colleagues enveloped me like a warm blanket, giving me the opportunity to exhale. Even when the weight of a broken marriage periodically overwhelmed me, in moments of this conscious employment, I felt that I was safe. One of my colleagues, Mary, a friend with whom we shared everything, came up to me one day, her voice full of concern. "Lily, I heard about last night. Are you okay?" Through a calm face, I managed to squeeze out a slightly bitter smile. "It was hard, Mary," I admitted, trying to keep my voice even, although everything was trembling inside. "But I can handle it." Mary was looking at me intently, her face expressing an unwavering determination to support me. "You're stronger than you think. And if you ever need a place to spend the night or just sit and talk, my door is always open," she said with a warm smile, hugging me with one look. I thanked her for this simple but priceless kindness. When she suggested that we meet in the evening and have a drink together, I agreed, feeling that this is exactly what I needed, a little time to talk and feel a little easier. That night, over a quiet conversation and a glass of wine, I was finally able to pour out my thoughts and feelings. We talked about everything, and I allowed myself to be frank. I told about the pain and betrayal, about how I felt when Adam became different. Mary listened attentively without interrupting, and I found comfort in her understanding. Our laughter, slipping through the words like threads of sunlight through dark clouds, gave us the feeling that there were still simple joys and moments of warmth in this world. Late at night, when I returned to my apartment, I looked at the phone screen and saw several missed calls from Adam. My heart contracted painfully, conflicting feelings flared up inside. I hesitated, not knowing whether to call back, but after weighing everything, I decided to send a message. Summoning all my resolve, I wrote, "I filed for divorce. Please respect my space at this time." My fingers were shaking when I pressed send. His reply came almost instantly, filled with despair and pleading. "Can we talk about this, please? Lily, I'm really sorry." I stared at the screen, feeling a wave of emotions wash over me, sadness, anger, relief, and something else, subtle but firm, as if a spark of determination had finally ignited inside me. My fingers quickly typed in the answer, "I need space, Adam. Good night." I looked around my small apartment, the space that had become my refuge. It was simple, but cozy, imbued with a quiet warmth and peace that I had not felt for a long time. Here, within these walls, there was no place for judgment or fear. No one could hurt me here. This was my sanctuary, a place where I could start over, slowly rebuilding myself, layer by layer, as if rebuilding a crumbling building. Thinking back to Adam, I realized how much our lives were divided by his own decisions and his mother's influence. It was sad to see how the man with whom I once shared dreams allowed toxicity to overshadow our future, pushing me away for the approval that he seemed to need more than our life together. But now I wasn't carrying that burden. I left him behind the night I first closed the door of his world behind me. Lying in my bed, I felt something new, a kind of awakening, barely perceptible, but warm, like the first breath of spring. That night, I realized that I was no longer just surviving. I was starting a new phase of life, one where I could truly live and not exist. Tomorrow I will be stronger, and the day after tomorrow I will be even more. It was just the beginning, and now I was ready to face whatever the new day would bring. My work at Renewed Energy has become more than just a distraction. It has become a springboard for my growth. I plunged into it with my head, doing everything possible to participate in larger-scale projects and bring new ideas to life. Every day my efforts bore fruit, my influence in the industry grew, and my network of professional contacts grew stronger. I was invited to speak at webinars and hold seminars where I shared my knowledge and demonstrated leadership skills that I had been developing over the years. My career was skyrocketing, and I was proud of myself, realizing how far I had come. One busy Sunday morning, sitting at my desk and looking through the proposals for a new campaign, I heard my phone vibrate. The name of Amy, one of my long-time and respected contacts in the marketing world, appeared on the screen. I answered, and her voice, full of warmth, immediately filled me with the feeling that something important was waiting for me ahead. "Hey, Lily, I have a project, and I think you're perfect for it," she said with a slight excitement that could be heard even through the phone. "Are you free to discuss this next week?" My heart skipped a beat, and I could barely contain a joyful smile, feeling a surge of joy rise inside. This was exactly the opportunity one had worked so hard for, and her words confirmed that I was on the right track. I could hardly hide my excitement, answering as calmly as possible, "Absolutely, Amy. I'd love to hear more." When the conversation ended, I sat for a long time with a slight smile on my face, realizing that my life was finally following the path that I had chosen for myself. Opportunities were opening up, and I was ready to use each of them, meeting everything that the future held in store for me with willingness and determination. Later, during the next conversation, Amy mentioned the news that she had heard about my breakup. Her voice was sympathetic but restrained. "I'm sorry you had to go through this." "Thank you, Amy," I replied, feeling a slight heaviness in my voice. "It wasn't easy, but I'm coping." Then, without hiding her joy, she invited me to speak at the upcoming conference with a topic that she thought would ideally suit my new stage of life. "It's about resilience and leadership. I think your experience, both personal and professional, will really resonate with the audience," she said. When Amy invited me to speak at a conference on sustainability and leadership, I felt thunderstruck. This offer took me by surprise, and although I did not expect something like this, a wave of understanding rose inside me. This opportunity came at the very moment when I was ready. Sharing a story of resilience after everything I've been through felt right. "It's a great honor for me, Amy. Thank you so much for thinking of me," I replied with a feeling of deep gratitude. This role spoke volumes, as well as the fact that my career is now growing with me. But with this success came rumors about the past, which became an integral part of my life, like a trace of the storms that once struck my heart. Now I've heard about Adam, about his problems in the profession, about how people who once treated him with respect began to gradually move away. One day, at an industry event, I accidentally overheard a conversation between two executives. One of them sighed, shaking his head, now he's looking for a job again. After he did this to Lily, no self-respecting director would take him on. These words hurt, but they were confirmation that I was no longer alone in my perception of events. People saw Adam as he was. My career flourished, and each new step strengthened me, and meanwhile Adam faced difficulties that seemed to fill his life. He tried to contact me several times, sending messages asking for help or for a conversation. I ignored them until one day I got a message that made me stop. "Lily, I really need your help. Can we meet?" The words, laced with despair, stirred up a strange feeling in me, an echo of those days when I still hoped for him, that we could cope. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a brief coffee meeting to hear what he had to say. When I entered the cafe and saw Adam, I barely recognized him. He was a shadow of himself, and his eyes, once confident, now radiated emptiness. His voice sounded low and broken as he began, "Lily, I made a mistake. I've lost so much, and now I can't find a job. It seems that all the doors are closed." I listened, experiencing a complex mix of emotions, regret and anger, but also feeling like the past was finally letting go of me. "Adam," I replied softly, but with firmness in my voice, "we can't change the past. You've made your choice, and now you're facing the consequences. I know, but you could help me, talk to people. Tell them that I've changed." He looked at me pleadingly. I shook my head, feeling that this conversation was the last chapter of our shared history. "Adam, the whole community knows what happened. People see your actions, and now it's not just about me, it's about you and your choices." My words sounded like a sentence he passed on himself. As I left the cafe, I was overcome by a strange mixture of pity and determination. Adam learned a hard lesson about respect and the consequences of his own decisions. It was a lesson he taught himself, and I couldn't change it. After returning to work, I plunged into my projects at renewed energy with renewed vigor, using my bitter experience as a source of strength. I wanted to help others, to share my understanding, because sometimes it is the most painful personal trials that lead us to the greatest triumphs. When my divorce was finally finalized, I felt almost physically relieved. It was as if she could finally exhale after a long, hard journey. It wasn't just a new chapter, it was an opportunity to take everything that the past had taught me and use it for my future. My role in the company has become much more than just a set of daily responsibilities. I launched a mentoring program for young women in marketing, feeling that now I have something valuable that I can pass on. The program allowed me to share my experiences and help others cope with the challenges that I once faced myself. My own journey of overcoming and searching inspired me to create a space where these women could feel the support and strength, understanding, and mentoring that I knew everyone needed. One day, at one of these classes, I met Lauren, a young, ambitious intern with burning eyes and an irresistible desire to learn. She reminded me of myself, the way I was at her age, full of aspirations and determination. During one of our conversations, she looked at me with a slight wariness, but her gaze was eager for answers. She had a notebook in her hands, ready to receive all her thoughts and my answers. "Lily, how do you deal with criticism?" she asked seriously. "Especially when it's expressed by people who think you're out of place." Her question took me by surprise, but it was painfully familiar. I remembered all the times when my competence was questioned, both in my personal and professional life. This answer has been born over the years, going through struggle and becoming. I paused, and then, looking at Lauren, I answered quietly, "Criticism often says more about the person who expresses it than about you. There will always be people who question your right to be where you are. but you will prove them wrong by staying true to yourself and your goals. Only your own opinion of yourself matters. You belong here, and the only person who needs to prove it is yourself." Lauren nodded thoughtfully, her face reflecting awareness and gratitude. "Thank you, Lily. It really helps," she said with a warm smile. I felt a wave of pride, not only for myself and for the path I had traveled, but also for the influence I could have on others. It was a new chapter that I was creating for myself, and I was ready for what the future would bring. "Listen, Lauren, study, and then let your work speak for you," I added, smiling. "Never let other people's doubts become your reality. Use them as fuel to work even harder." Lauren quickly wrote down my words, and then looked at me. Her gaze became more serious. "What if it gets really hard?" she asked quietly. I answered by putting my hand on her shoulder, then asked for support. "Find mentors, don't be afraid to ask for help. We are stronger together." Her grateful look indicated that she understood the meaning of these words. The mentoring program has become a source of joy and satisfaction for me, as has my growing professional community. I was increasingly invited to speak at industry events and meetings, where I shared my story and the lessons I had learned. At one of these events, a networking dinner for leading marketing professionals, Scott, a former colleague who had heard about my recent successes, approached me. There was genuine admiration in his eyes. "Lily, I have to say that your path and story are really inspiring," he said warmly. "How do you manage to keep moving forward after everything?" I smiled, accepting his compliment. "Every challenge is just another step towards something more," I replied. "It's important not to let your past determine your future." During the evening, our conversation flowed from a friendly conversation to a discussion of possible cooperation. "Lily, have you ever thought about writing a book?" Scott suddenly asked, his eyes sparkling with thoughtfulness. "Your story could inspire so many," he added with a slight smile. I froze for a moment, as if this proposal caught me off guard, but somewhere inside it lit a spark. The idea appealed to me. By the end of the evening, I had exchanged contacts with the publisher, who was also present at the event. The feeling that every meeting, every conversation opened new doors for me filled me with pride. It was a clear sign of how far I had come from that timid woman sitting silently at the dinner table to a confident professional woman whose life was now full of meaning and achievements. My confidence grew with every step. I have led seminars, coordinated marketing campaigns, and become a voice of sustainability and self-fulfillment for young women in our industry. Every talk and every seminar was not just an opportunity to share knowledge, but also a way to heal yourself. I turned past pain into useful lessons, opening the way for others, as I once discovered it for myself. One night, after a busy day filled with meetings and new projects, I was lying in bed and thinking about how my life had changed. I was no longer the woman who sat in the shadows, suffering in silence, resigned to her overwhelming circumstances. Now I was a leader, a mentor, a person who took my pain and turned it into something meaningful. It was not just a new beginning, it was a bright, decisive stage in my journey, which I was proud to call my own. Months passed, and the memories of the past with Adam gradually faded, becoming distant shadows. My life was full and eventful now. I was completely focused on the future and the opportunities that opened up in front of me. The past has become a quiet echo, a barely perceptible whisper in the back of my mind. One afternoon, during a meeting with Isabella, our mutual friend, this echo suddenly came to life. Isabella began the conversation cautiously. "Lily, I accidentally saw Adam. He really seems to be sorry. He says that he realized a lot. He's sorry." I lowered my gaze so as not to meet her eyes, and delicately sipped my coffee, letting her words sink in. People often begin to regret their actions when they feel their consequences, I replied calmly, restraining the inner emotions that Isabella's words had caused somewhere deep. She continued, apparently hoping that my words were just a preface. He would like to talk to you, perhaps apologize. I think he's really remorseful. There was a mixture of hope and anxiety on her face. I thought about it, remembering everything I had to go through, but I raised my head and shook it. Isabella, I'm grateful that you told me that. But that part of my life is in the past, I said firmly, and her face lit up with understanding. I continued, I have moved forward, towards new opportunities, to people who appreciate and support my growth. I have no desire to look back. We quickly changed the subject, as if returning to these memories was like an old book that should be closed forever. Adam's attempts to contact me again, his calls and texts, no longer stirred my heart. Now my life was full of hope and surrounded by people for whom I mattered, who saw in me not only the woman who suffered from a crushing relationship, but also the one who rose above her pain and stepped into a world that was open to her and all her dreams. I have become someone who accepts challenges with an open heart, who finds strength in the face of adversity, who overcomes every barrier with determination to keep moving forward. Looking back, I realized that every moment of struggle, every difficulty, and every doubt shaped me, turned me into the person I became. And now, standing at the top of my career, confidently leading projects, inspiring those who need support, I realize that I am exactly where I am destined to be. The future stretches out in front of me, and I am ready to face it without turning around, without regrets. I remain firm in my decision to keep my distance from the past. Every time Adam tried to contact me again, I responded with silence. It wasn't an expression of anger or resentment. It was a choice for the sake of my own well-being, for the sake of the world I had built. Now I've been speaking at conferences, implementing exciting marketing campaigns, and watching my mentoring program flourish. The influence I had on others filled me with a genuine sense of satisfaction. By sharing my story, I saw how it inspires those who have also faced challenges similar to mine. In the evenings, I sometimes reflected on the past year and saw how much I had changed. I didn't just survive, I really thrived. My life was filled with meaning, success, and new perspectives, and knowing that Adam regretted his choice brought me neither pride nor satisfaction. Rather, it reminded me of the consequences of disrespecting someone else's dreams, someone else's life. After closing the diary full of plans and thoughts, I felt a deep peace. My experience with Adam has pushed me towards a life where there is strength, confidence, and loyalty to my own values. I found victory not in his regret, but in my own strength, in being able to turn pain into strength, that I began to live the way I dreamed. So, this is Lily's story, the story of overcoming and finding yourself. Do you think Lily was right to cut Adam off from her life? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you like this story, please like and subscribe to learn more about inspiring fates like this one.